today's 251st BlockTalks, we speak with João Alves, co-founder of Bleap, to discuss how blockchains are rewiring Fintech on-chain. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is BlockTalks, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody, I'm here with João Alves, who's going to tell us who he is and what he does with blockchain. João, welcome to BlockTalks.
Hey, Mauricio. Thank you for having me. Yeah, happy to start with a quick intro from myself. So my name is João. Before starting Bleap, I used to work in a fintech called Revolut. I've built there a card program everywhere in the world. So from Europe, Brazil, Mexico, US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Japan. So a global program was what I set up there. And I started Bleap around 2024. We started Bleap to try to build a global account built on the blockchain. So what a user normally would see is a traditional fintech, just like Nubank or just like Revolut, but where the assets are always on chain. So it's a fully non-custodial wallet that runs on the blockchain and then is integrated directly with Visa, MasterCard. You can do payments in BRL, you can do payments in euros, you can really just use it for day-to-day life. But in the back end, it's running completely on chain.
I love that. On the back is on chain. Love that. But before you ran into blockchain and even on fintech, you have a different background. So what is your pre-fintech, pre-crypto background story, origin story, if you will?
Yeah. To be fair, I started in retail, essentially like retail sales. So I was working for one of the biggest supermarkets here in Portugal, where I was doing data science there. So that's where I started. I also worked in a marketplace at Farfetch. So I was in both companies for around 1 year. So at Farfetch, I was also doing a bit of data science. So trying to design route optimization algorithms. So who's the merchant that should sell item A to somewhere in the other side of the world? What's the best way to optimize this? And then at the supermarket one, I was working for the CFO into basically trying to bring analytics to decision making. So things like, should a supermarket be selling fresh fish? Should a supermarket be selling fresh meat? Or should they sell prepackaged items, for example? What's the uplift in the rest of the supermarket sales? So really just working with data and trying to bring into decision making. This was for around 2 years. And then I switched to Revolut. I was first living in Portugal, and then I switched to Revolut. I moved to London, and there I joined card payments. It was a completely different skill set there. There was trying to essentially optimize when a user is taking a card into a merchant, like for example Starbucks. What are the levers that we can pull so that we make the most money possible in that optimization, in that flow? And that those are things like choosing the right card products, choosing the right FX, the right currency to settle with MasterCard. So doing all of that back-end flows, or the way the money is moving in the back end, so that in the end, even though from the customer point of view, there's really no difference, from the company's point of view, the gross profit is quite different in that optimization of cash flow.
Wow. Very similar, because I come from data. Before running in a blockchain, I'm also first and foremost a data guy, more on the governance side for large corporations, but always fascinated with data. And that's one of the things that really attracted me when I ran into Bitcoin. I'm like, oh, we can fix a lot of data with this. So, imagine a world where we don't have any reconciliations. That would be amazing. So for that is a very similar background. But then cards and payments, all this optimization and all of that. Revolut is a beast of a company. And I have to ask, what bit you that you woke up one day and you realized that's not for you and you have to fix this other problem that is, that you're so passionate about? What is this problem and how did that come to be? Why would you walk away from Revolut to launch your own thing?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. So when I joined Revolut, I think I can start there. When I joined Revolut, it was not a beast of a company. I think we were 300 employees when I joined. So it was just a small startup, to be honest. A really fun environment to work in. But when I joined, it was just a small company. It didn't have a banking license yet. So there was more freedom on the things that you could do. That was more freedom on how fast you can run. But to this day, I still think it's an amazing company to work at. But I think what started to attract me is I was in charge of the global setup for cards, right? And what does that mean? That means that, for example, when Revolut wanted to launch in Brazil or when Revolut wanted to launch in Mexico, I was in charge of scoping, okay, for this person in Mexico to receive a card, to take this card and to make a payment, how is the money going to flow from the customer or from Revolut account or the customer Revolut account, the customer's Revolut account? How is that money going to flow from the customer to MasterCard, to Visa, to whatever it might have to flow? And what's really interesting when you're trying to solve these problems is you are dealing with very old technology. Like fintech is amazing in the front end, like it looks really good. But imagine you are running in this plumbing that was built in 1970, like Swift, which is one of the main plumbing we use to settle. It was built in 1970. So you are really trying to build this Ferrari on top. And then in the bottom, you are dealing with complications that are just crazy. Like, for example, the fact that to this day, when you are processing payments with your card, like we cannot settle on the weekends. Like we cannot pay the merchant on the weekend, which means that there's a lot of money that you need to keep around just to make sure that when Monday comes, all of those payments that are eating, that you still have this liquidity. And through this experience, you start to really imagine a lot of things like, man, if instead of building on top of this old plumbing, if I was building on top of new plumbing, problem A, B, C wouldn't even exist because those are not real problems. Those are problems of people trying to build on top of technology that is 50 years old. And I remember one example perfectly, which was when we were launching Mexico. I think our team spent around 6 months really just optimizing for this. When a customer wants to send money from Europe to Mexico, we are going to be able to do it in under 1 day for a fee less than 1%. Just this, like this was, if you think about like stable coins, this is just a terrible proposition. Like it's going to take 1 day and I'm going to pay 1%. But this for the market, this was like unbelievably good. But it took me 6 months to achieve. And at that point in time, I was already very into DeFi and stable coins. Like I was really a lot of yield farming, basically stable coins is what I was doing. But I was still moving a lot of money around with stable coins. And I was really just coming back to the same thing of thinking, man, if I was building this with stable coins, instead of 6 months, it would take me maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. And instead of paying 1% fee, it would be free. And instead of 1 day, it would be instant. So it was very clear that there was a next step that you could take in terms of building on fintech, and that the next step was going to be, instead of using old technology, to start using the new one. So this is what was on my mind. Then, in terms of what problem I was trying to solve, really what I knew for a fact were two things. From a customer point of view, I was sure that if I build a fintech on the blockchain, I'm going to be able to build a product that provides customers with better outcomes in things they really care about. And what were those things? On the saving side, I could provide customers with accounts that gave them a higher yield than a traditional bank deposit. So this was super important for customers. And I knew if I built it on the blockchain and I use DeFi, I could do this better. On the trading side, I knew for a fact that with the amount of real world assets that we already have, with the amount of tokens that exist out there, with the amount of assets that you can run on the blockchain now, I could provide a single trading experience where they could trade any token or any asset at the lowest fee they could ever find. Why? Because I could remove a middleman. I didn't need a Coinbase or anything like that. It runs on chain. The liquidity is there. Like you can remove one person from there and let them trade any asset in the world for the lowest fee. So that second one was also really cool. That's something we could do. And the third one was on the remittance side, because and this one was experienced firsthand, like sending money with where you do the cross border with stablecoin and then you do a local settlement. That experience is 10x what the experience would be if you send it through Swift. Like there's just no comparison, fee wise and speed wise. And finally, I knew that if I'm able to build a fintech on the blockchain and instead of issuing my own e-money, I'm running on a public ledger, running on top of others people e-money, the efficiency I could get from that, I would be able to, every time a customer transacts with their card, I would be able to give them more cash back because it would cost me less to process that transaction. So I was absolutely sure from a customer point of view, I can build a better product. And then the second part that I found super enticing as a company or as someone trying to build fintechs, the hardest problem you have in fintech is, but by a mile, geographical expansion. You can have the best product you want and it can scale quite well. Once you go into a new country, you're going to hit a regulation problem. And that's from the fact that if you are a bank or a fintech, you are holding customers' assets. If you go bankrupt, the customer is going to lose money. And just this statement means that when you are going to a new country, you need to have a new license because the local regulator is not going to find funny that the fact that you are serving local people, that you are a risk to their ecosystem, and that you are not regulated. And this means that every time you are going to a new country, you need $5 to $10 million and you need 2 years setup time. This is a fact. Like it's not something you can go around. And what for me is so interesting on the blockchain, especially when you're building non custodial, you are no longer a risk. I don't have customers' money. The money is just not there. It's on the blockchain. So, which means that every time I'm trying to do geographical expansion, the barrier I need to overcome is going to be much, much lower than with a traditional fintech or a traditional bank account, just from the fact that I don't represent the same risk. If my company goes bankrupt tomorrow, the customer is zero impacted because he has a private key. He can take it to MetaMask and he can continue to use his money from there. Like I don't represent a systemic risk for any country or any ecosystem, and that in the short term, there, of course, like even when regulation is catching up, okay, it's going to be easier. But even on the long term, like I will never represent the same risk, or I will never have to have the same hops and to be regulated to the same level that a bank is, just because we don't have customers' money. And I think from both a customer perspective and from a business perspective, that is such a next level, a next step in what fintech could be that we decide, okay, we need to tackle this problem. We need to try to make this happen. And that's exactly what we did.
That's a great vision. Now, I'm going to pick up on your cards experience because I've started exploring some alternative payment authorization methods because of crypto, right? In crypto, you have a lot more flexibility handling money movement and authorization, and there's a lot of cryptographic things you can do that are easier to handle and maybe provide a better experience, if not a self-sovereign experience. When you're cutting middlemen the way you described, and you're still keeping the card form factor into the mix, you're still relying on legacy structures such as Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and whatnot, right? So if you're building this thin layer of experience for users to come on chain, how do you foresee that form factor of payment authorization, maybe not to replace the card form factor or the card scheme authorization mechanisms because they have a place in the world. But what is the evolution of that in terms of, okay, now we're natively doing things in ways that the blockchain now allows us to, and we are not subject to centralized actors such as payment cards. They have their place in the world, but what will be their next evolution? Is this on-chain identity? Is this anything agentic? Is this stablecoins in some other form? What have you elaborated on that and prospectively?
We need to take a look at what is Visa and MasterCard. Because a lot of the times people they get confused in thinking that MasterCard is a tech company and that what's really interesting in MasterCard is the settlement layer or the authorization layer, that this is where the value accrues for them. And this is not correct. Visa and MasterCard, they are the biggest marketplace in the world. And they are a marketplace where they have the merchant, where the businesses that are accepting. And on the other side, they have the customers, the issuers that hold the cards. And they match those two. And because they've made such a great job in terms of business development, they have merchants everywhere in the world. You have this form factor for a payment that you can take, and it's accepted everywhere in the world, right? This is the marketplace. then this marketplace is running on top of the technology that they've built, which is the authorization and settlement layer that they are using very traditional technology, like they are using Swift network, for example, to power this. But the real challenge, like stable coins, they can replace the technology layer, right? But this would be the same thing as saying, okay, I'm going to build a new Facebook or a new Instagram because instead of building with I'm just throwing it out there, right? But instead of building with Java, I'm gonna use I don't know whatever would be the next iteration of a programming language that would be better. And if you look from a business perspective, you're like, why would the customer care if it's running on Java or anything like? It just really doesn't care, right? And I think from a Mastercard or Visa point of view, it's exactly the same. Stable coins might at some point replace the settlement layer, the authorization layer, right? But that's not going to bring us any closer to removing the middleman, because where the value is accruing for them is really this marketplace that they've built where there's so many merchants and so many issuers. And when I was looking at this problem, because I was looking at payments in general as well, like how can I tackle this problem? And as you know, like building a marketplace where you don't have either one, the demand or the offer is just an incredibly hard problem to solve. Like Uber did this, of course, famously well. There are a lot of examples of people doing this famously well, like Airbnb and things like that. But it's a really hard problem to solve. So what did we thought? We know that technology is going on this direction. Where can I solve a problem for one of these people? I could start with the merchant and say, okay, I'm going to accept stable coins. It's going to be great for the merchant, but at the end, it's going to settle faster. But that would mean that I would have to have issuers or users spending there. So if I start on the merchant side, I need to solve the marketplace as a whole. But if I could start on the issuer side, meaning if I could start on the end user first and start providing some real utility from day zero, I could provide him with some real utility and bring him into my ecosystem of okay, or not mine, but it's open source ecosystem of the blockchain, right? And is accruing value from day zero. Maybe there's a play in the near future where I can start then looking at the merchant. So that's exactly what we decided to do. So right now we are, of course, dependent on, we are not touching this part in the marketplace in terms of the technology layer. We are touching the marketplace in terms of, okay, can I capture first this side of the marketplace? Can I get enough users? Because once I get enough users, I'm going to be able to go to a merchant and say, hey, you know what? Right now you're paying 3-4% to MasterCard and Visa. It takes 5 days for the money to arrive to you. What if it's at 3 or 4%? What if it could be zero? What if it could be instant for you? Do you want to join this marketplace here? And I think that value proposition is going to be so unequivocally better than what they have out there. So they're actually going to be motivated to do. So I think that's really the next step of first, you bring one side of the marketplace on chain, which is the users. You let them accrue value through yield, remittances, trading. And then you start to show them, hey, you know what? Actually, there's this middleman here that is capturing 3-4% of all of your transactions that it could disappear. And we can share this value across the merchant and the end user as well.
That explains a lot why all of them, Visa, MasterCard, and not so much Amex, but they are also starting to try and capture that. And
yeah,
I mean, I don't think there's a week that goes by without any of these three actually announcing something either with stable coins or with agents and things like that. You gotta you gotta show some respect because keeping yourself relevant is being a large corporation is a heavy lift. I've been there. It's not an easy task.
It is, and I think both the three of them, Amex, Mastercard, and Visa, they deserve a lot of credit because it's a payment method that works everywhere you go in the world. It's really not about the rails that money runs under. It's really about the network that they were able to build that is so hard to compete against because they've done such a good job of getting that everywhere.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I did not probe you on, and I usually do, and I think the story is so interesting that I was going to forget. How did you find crypto, or how did crypto find you? Was this like part of the job, or was this something that you did on the side, like a proper degen, and all of a sudden these two things kind of clicked together? How did that happen?
So I was a bit late into crypto, to be honest. I joined in 2021. 2021. And it was really funny because it was an extra Evolut colleague that he had left. He was building a stable coin. And he sent me a message saying, hey, do you want to join us? Do you want to help out? And I was like, okay, what are you guys doing? And it was like, oh, we are building this stable coin in DeFi so that you can access DeFi yield super easily, etc., etc. And my question was, what is DeFi? Like, I just didn't know the word back then. And I said, and he explained, and I say, oh, actually, let me look into this. And I remember perfectly, I started to take a look into the internet, and I found this book that is called How to DeFi from, I think it's from CoinGecko, that they have. It was like a 80, 100 pages book that went through what blockchain was trying to do. And then all of the use cases of if you try to use blockchain and the no trust assumption, how do you replace a trading house? How do you replace a lottery system? Like all of these use cases that you could use and the examples of protocols that were trying to do this. And I got really into these parts, especially when I got into the yield generation part, because it's so interesting, right? You have these vending machines that are these liquidity pools. You can participate and the machine is there, you put your capital, and then you're going to get a yield. I'm starting to experience all my impermanent losses as well, like all of these things. But that's really where it came from. And I spent, I think, a year and a half, like really starting to deploy more and more capital into these opportunities as I got more confident. But I was really not into tokens or anything like that. I was really from the start just into the protocols, into the DeFi opportunity and the yield opportunities that existed. And you start to have all of these pain points, right? You want to try to deploy capital, but every time I'm putting 100 euros, I'm losing one in this crazy FX fee. So how do I make this more efficient? So I need to hop money. Like it start to see so many problems of, okay, I know that there's value here in the yield, but just for me to get there, it's just so hard, right? So you really start to experience all of these pain points that you start to think, okay, I know this is better, but there's so many pain points I can start to solve. So that's how I got into the system. And I think 2 years later, that's when I decided, okay, I know enough. I understand the problem space. I know there is value to provide to our user to new users here, that if I could just simplify this thing. And really in the beginning we were all about one click DeFi, right? You with the one click you send 100 euros, and then with the second, and you have 100 euro C. With a second click you have this deployed into a DeFi protocol. You don't need to know anything about crypto. You just need to understand where that there's yield to be made. And really this was almost the initial vision of what's the value we're going to provide to our customers.
Yeah, the one click thing is a so you kind of joined crypto during DeFi summer, right? 2021. So it was very interesting moment to join, because there was a lot of parallelism between what DeFi was doing better than TradFi, but also things that DeFi didn't tap that TradFi did, but also things that DeFi did and TradFi did. There was so much boiling ideas in that moment. It was really fun to participate.
It was. And every week something new was coming up. You had to do these deep dives just to understand, like when there's this curve and convex swarm. And it was such an interesting time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, you worked at Revolut early days. Where did the entrepreneurial spirit came from? Like, is this something you had? Does it run in the family? Do you have, any inspiration that prompted you to do it?
Yeah.
When did you get the bug to build your own thing?
So me and my co-founder, we actually studied together, and then we joined Revolut together as well. Quite funnily enough, during college we try. I think the main things like we had a drop shipping business that really didn't make any money. While we were in college, we still did a startup. We raised a super small, around like $10,000 from this small accelerator in Portugal to build this. Actually, now it would be it was quite interesting. So to build this nano influencer platform. So basically, you could get kind of what Cluely is doing now. We were trying to do a version of that for the college parties and summer parties, where you could get a bunch of people for a free drink when they join, if they do the story about these parties. Then we switched to, we also tried to do one that now is quite big, but before it was not, like these QR codes on a table, so you can order through a QR code. This was when McDonald's introduces those machines, you could click on it. Unfortunately, this was before COVID, so it was not really a thing, and we were in college. And then once we finished college, we decided, okay, let's try to get some experience. Then we went to Revolut. We were there for almost 5 years or 4 years and a half. And so the spirit was there. And then what I'd say, Revolut is the best business school in the world. Like we launch so many products. You really start so many times from scratch, like from 0 to 100 through those products, that by the end, like once you've done this so many times, you really feel, okay, I know how to problem solve. I know how a product gets made. So if you are interested, if this is something that you find exciting, it's a really easy step. And furthermore, of course, coming from a startup like this, it opens a lot of doors for you in terms of being able to raise capital. And really, you have the hunger, you have the knowledge, and then you have the capital available. So it really becomes super easy to take the next step. I was super fortunate with this. So yeah, that's where it comes from.
So the Revolut Mafia is a thing.
Oh, that it is 100% the thing. I think we're more than 150 now, and it's really a powerful thing because everyone like so many people that went through what you went this is for sure, and then you have so many people willing to help you. Like I remember when every time you come out of Revolut and you go to raise money, there's almost this pilgrimage that you can do where you go through all of these VCs that already they've all spoke with all the Revolut founders. Some invest, some don't, but like from the get-go, which I think like raising money is a funnel, right? But from the get-go, you start with like 100 potential people that would be able to fund you, maybe not willing to, but able to. And this is just a leg up. So I think it's really helpful to have this kind of support.
I think the fintech and crypto have that like very similarly, where there's this community vibe around, the people and the businesses, which is, you can't say the same from traditional finance. I've worked in traditional finance for over 20 years. And even though I do have a huge network there, my crypto network is so much bigger, so much more available. And it is a very different vibe. Maybe that's where we should be going anyway as a community. Looking more towards you as a person, and now that you're building in the intersection between fintech and crypto, crypto does not stop. This is a 24/7, 365, in your face. Crypto Twitter is a thing, and now crypto LinkedIn is also a thing. So you can get overwhelmed by just being in the industry, let alone building in the industry. So how do you balance that? How do you keep healthy, sane in the center, working in an industry that just refuses to stop?
Yeah, I think it's a two-step or a two vertical of optimization there. I think on one hand, in crypto, it's really easy to get distracted. Every week there's something new. There's a new trend, there's a new thing to do. And if you don't have a goal or a vision that is super defined, you can get sidetracked quite easily because okay, one day is perpetuals, the other day is prediction markets, the other day is crypto AI. Like if you go chasing all of these trends, you can really start circling around. So the way we try to do that is we have our North Star of what we are trying to achieve. And in our case, luckily, it's very clear for us from the beginning. Like we haven't, for the good or for the bad, we haven't really changed, we haven't pivoted or anything like that, which was we are trying to build a fintech on the blockchain. We are trying to build an app for retail person. I like to say for my mom to be able to use. And what a normal person wants is they want a savings account, they want a spending account, they want to be able to make investments. Like it's really as simple as that. Everything else that exists in the crypto space, it might at some point be something they do, but it's just not something we're going to go through right now because we are just focused on how can I get my mom to come here and say, okay, I'm going to choose between Nubank, Revolut, Robinhood, or Bleap. It's all the same thing. And then I'm going to start to compare the features or the value accrual on each one, and I'm going to make a decision. So for us, it's kind of easier to stay focused, but still, of course, like we are trying to build an investment. So should we chase these perpetual, these pre-IPO stocks? Should we chase these real world assets that are coming in that are doing some new things? So it's I think that part it's still hard, but having your North Star very clear, or what's the problem you're trying to solve? Where are you trying to go? I think this is super helpful. And then on the other hand, this is the same thing as I think anyone trying to build a startup. I like to say to everyone, this is not a 9 to 5, but this is also not 16 hours a day. And I think it's really important because in 1 year, if you work 16 hours a day, you are going to achieve a lot, but you're probably not going to last more than 1 year. This is the reality. You are going to burn out. And if instead of 16, you are doing 12 and you're able to last 4, that's going to be way more helpful in the long term. So this is, I know it's a cliche, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like there's going to be hype, bear markets, bull markets, but in the end of the day, if you're able to keep your track, and so for us, it's really trying to find that balance of I'm working harder, of course, than I would be in my 9 to 5. Like there's just no question about that. But really, what you need to be super mindful always is if it's all going to be worth nothing if you burn out. So really that's the KPI that you're trying to avoid, which is the probability of burnout needs to be close to zero. Of course, you need to work super hard, but the probability of burnout needs to be close to zero. And that really means like you need to exercise every day, like you need to be going out, you need to, of course, you're not going to live the most exciting social life when you're building a startup, but you need to see people. Otherwise, like we've been now here for 3 years, 2.5 years, but I feel full of energy. Like I'm ready to do 10 more. Like this is not a problem, right? And I think being able to have that is super important.
And you do have that as a company culture, because I recall your recent post. I think your guy Caleb was in the middle of a swim, so he called you after that. And I thought that was, we we can call it employee branding, if you will, but I think this is one of those genuine examples of people who are excited about doing things, but also excited about life, and find ways to fit both into the mix, which I think is super important. And I think it speaks exactly to what you just said. If we look more towards the industry now, a wider view, what do you think is the one thing that as an industry we need to fix today to avoid hindering the industry in the next 20, 30 years?
Actually, this is something that we are super worried about at the moment because I think this is really life threatening for crypto as an industry. I don't know how to fix it, but we are trying to say to everyone, like population in general, that blockchain is better than traditional rails. But every single day or every single week, we have hacks at an amount that are just not compatible. So for right now, we used to look at Aave, right? For example, where you are getting 4% on your stable coins versus getting 3% on money in a bank. And the risk reward there, like up until a year ago, was there. Like it's so clear. You get 1 extra percent. This is great. But if we continue to get hacked, if the money continues to disappear, that risk reward is going to invert completely. And we are going to be in a situation where because the risk is so high, these protocols are going to have to charge such a high fee for them to be able to reward the capital that is participating in these liquidity pools, whatever it might be, that all of the blockchain technology, things like being able to trade, being able to actually interact with these robots that we have on the blockchain, are just going to be more expensive than if you were doing this in a retail or in a traditional market. So I think this is really the part that worries me about the most, because one of the things I always imagined was if you want to do FX from euro to USD, the blockchain is going to have this killer use case because they can charge a 1 bp there and retail is going to have access to FX fees for 1 bp. But this 1 bp only works, obviously, if the capital that is loaning this money to the protocols really thinks there's zero risk here, so I just need to pay myself slightly more than the yield that a central bank is paying. And as we continue to have these hacks and as the perceived risk of blockchain applications continue to rise, this is going to kill a lot of the use cases that we were taking for granted, which was you bring retail on chain for them to accrue more value than they would in a new bank or in a Revolut or Robinhood. And that might no longer be true if we are continuing this trajectory. So I think this is really life threatening for the blockchain, not because of the money that disappears, but because of the confidence and the risk that this implies in all of the crypto applications that we have. And it's a really tough one to solve because you want people to have control of their money. But at the end of the day, what prevents these hacks from happening in a traditional bank is, okay, you might steal 100 million, but you're not going to be able to move them, right? Because nobody's going to accept a SEPA transfer or a SWIFT transfer of 100 million without asking questions. So I think we are really in an intersection of how are we going to be able to move from here? And of course, AI is amazing at finding these bugs. Hopefully, it's going to be also amazing at preventing them. But this is a battle, and as an industry, we are losing it right now. So it's a very life-threatening part right now for DeFi as a whole.
I usually say that the risks of being your own bank are the same risks of being a bank. And not everyone is ready to be that bank. So I'm with you there. But I also think that if there is a layer of security on the AI aspect, I think this is an edge, because these technologies are by and large open source, right? So there's a lot of attention and a lot of access to the underlying code base. They are permissionless, so anyone can actually go and improve on them, which makes DeFi and blockchain applications in general much more prone to be more secure over time than their centralized counterparts. Because if you have 1,000 engineers looking into your enterprise repo, it's not 20,000 engineers from crypto companies looking into your crypto, running their own agents on your code base to find exploits. So I think the ethos and the foundation, the moral foundation of crypto still gives crypto as an industry a potential upside or a moat, if you will. But at the same time, there's something that you talked about that crypto didn't do well or so well until today, which is user experience, right? Every time you talk about user experience, that stems from someone who came from fintech, found in crypto some primitives that would create better overall economics, and you're merging the two of them in a way. So I think I understand how existential security can be, but once this is rampant everywhere, it's for centralized and decentralized finance the same. So I still think that I agree with you that this is a major problem that needs to be fixed. And as an industry, we were not seen as the most responsible in that regard, right? So now, word to the wise, if the largest DeFi protocol can be hacked, anyone can be hacked. So let's just do a better job at that. We're about our time, but I do want to offer the listeners who stay with us thus far, what would you want them to take away from our little conversation today?
Yeah, I think we are contrary to the bear market sentiment. I think we are in a really exciting place in crypto right now. I think we have, apart from being speculation, we have found a very nice product market fit for crypto as a whole. I think stable coins are here to stay. Business have adopted them, like cross-border payments with stable coins. It's a thing now. Like, this is no longer maybe a potential product market fit. This is real. What we are trying to do now is at Bleap, okay, can we bring this product market fit from stablecoins into a retail use case? So I think we are getting there. There are a lot of people working on this problem right now, and I think it's going to be super exciting times ahead for crypto. It might not be you put 10 euros in a token and you get to 100,000 in 2 days or 3 days, but it's really, the industry is maturing, and like every startup, like once you find the product market fit, scaling from there, it's a really exciting time, like to be in crypto as a whole. Even though we are in the bear market, I think as a whole, crypto is growing, and it's very clear how we can bring this to retail. So yeah, super exciting to be.
Cool. So Revolut, Monzo, and Robinhood, watch your back. João, it was a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing a bit of your history with us. Hope to see you around in the city at some point.
Thank you, Mauricio.
Thank you so much. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockTalks Podcast, on Twitter at BlockTalksPod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to João for taking the time with us and sharing his incredible story from Revolut to Bleap. Also, shout out to Caleb Hill for serving as an example in the podcast. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.